Good morning and welcome back. Let's make a deal. President Trump and Kim Jong-un will come face-to-face for a historic summit on June 12th in Singapore.
The president making it his mission to denuclearize the entire Korean peninsula. So what does he need to do to get that done? Here now is Lieutenant General Richard Newton, former Assistant Vice Chief of Staff for the U.S. Air Force. Sir, thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you again.
All right. Yeah. And we want to start just the first question. Initially right now at this point, it seems like there is a great divide and a lot of space between what each of these men are going to want. It seems like it's going to be a lot to bridge that gap, doesn't it?
Well, it is. I think President Trump is going into these, the summit, which is now reportedly going to be taking place in Singapore on June 12th, really from a position of strength. And that's how he needs to approach the summit and these negotiations. A position of strength not only militarily, but certainly economically and diplomatically as well. Secondly, however, he ought to keep in mind, not keep in mind, but keep at the forefront, certainly, the number one objective here is the denuclearization of North Korea or the peninsula. And that is whereby it needs to be, whatever negotiations come through and whatever end game results from this summit, it's got to be complete, it's got to be verifiable, and certainly irresistible, or not irresistible, but irreversible. With regard to the denuclearization. Now, so the president's got to, but that's a very tall order, so it's going to be tough going.
Well, right, and typically in a negotiation, you have two sides that are willing to give up a little bit to get a little bit of something else. Now, what if North Korea doesn't want to completely denuclearize? What do you see President Trump doing then?
Well, I think he has to stay at the negotiating table. He has to bring in other diplomatic partners, Jillian, with certainly with Japan, South Korea, but mainly China as well. It's in everyone's interest to denuclearize, particularly if Kim wants to proceed and move forward with his own efforts to help the economic situation, not only for him personally, but also for North Korea as they move forward. The other thing to keep in mind here is time is on everyone's side, I believe. This is going to be a lengthy process, not just the June 12th summit, but what comes afterwards, what comes in the ensuing negotiations, and what will be certainly multi-party talks between South Korea and North Korea, but also with the U.S., and again, as I mentioned, with Japan and China as well. So we go into this with our eyes wide open, realize that, North Korea and South Korea have been at war. All we have is just an armistice, if you will, since the war broke out on June 25th, 1950. So there's been generations when this has been a very unstable situation. Now with nuclear weapons thrown in there, because the cards are a lot taller in this case.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, it certainly seems like a tall order right now to get them to denuclearize. Let's move on to another part of the world, though, and into the Middle East. We have this situation with Iran and with Israel, and they're firing missiles at each other. This has really escalated, and when the United States just pulled out of the Iran deal amid so much criticism to it. The reason that Iran is lined up here in Syria is because we've pumped so much money into their economy over the last few years because of that deal. We have allowed them to arm up and to try and set up all of these other factions across the Middle East that are anti-West and anti-Israel. Is this not exactly why we pulled out of this deal?
Well, let's keep in mind, Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. And our number one ally and friend in the region is Israel. And what we had on Thursday morning was an incursion or attack, if you will, from Iranian Quds forces from the Golan Heights area into Israel, attacking Israeli defense forces. And so Israel responded in a rather robust fashion, in fact, more so than we've seen in even the entire 7-year period of the Syrian war. Israel seeing Iran now being much more entrenched and certainly much more involved with with the Syrian civil war and backing up Assad and so forth. And so Israel sees that as certainly a threat, and they responded significantly in this case. So we need to, I would hope that, we would, forces would, on both sides would tamp down perhaps, but we need to watch this one closely. And I think the next several days, if not the next 24 to 48 hours, will be key to determine how this moves forward or not.
Okay. Lieutenant General Richard Newton, we appreciate it. Thank you.